SAFM.
SAFM.
South Africa's news and information leader.
This is Literature with Karabo Kholeng. It's time to discuss foreign language education, looking at various learning and teaching strategies with Janet Whelan, who is member of the English Academy of Southern Africa. And I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly, Janet. Good afternoon. Welcome to SAFM.
Hello, Karabo.
Thank you for joining us. Now, how is learning a foreign language different to other kinds of learning, if at all?
Oh dear, learning a foreign language. Depends on what other kinds of learning. I mean, foreign languages is how we communicate. So with not knowing the language that you're trying to learn, it makes it very difficult. If you're learning any other thing, you're learning it. You've got the words, the language to work with.
Right. And so what are the first things that you are required to learn when you learn a foreign language?
Well,
what are
I'm
the first
mostly
things that you
involved
teach?
with learning of teaching people to speak English, not necessarily write or read, although that does come into it. But we teach in English, so we don't use the learner's language at all.
Okay.
And, there are various ways to do that. You have to try and get your message across through gestures and things that you use to try and get your point across.
So how do you begin? I mean, the first lesson, how do you get students to start to pick up on the basics?
Well, for example, when I did the TEFL course, we had less than an hour's teaching or learning in Mandarin. Now, the teacher that we had didn't use any English at all. And suddenly we're faced with this Mandarin, and obviously the first thing you learn is the greeting.
Okay.
And then once you've learned that, you learn to exchange greetings with other people. But in less than an hour, we managed to learn in Mandarin different types of fruits, to count to 5, to ask the price of things, obviously those fruits that we'd learned, and basically hold a conversation. And all that was done only in Mandarin, without any English at all.
So are the first things you learn ways to communicate issues around surviving and just getting by?
Well, yes. I mean, when the lessons that we teach, we usually have a theme, and when you're starting right at the beginner's class, we use the everyday things like going into a shop and buying something, cooking a meal and serving a meal, going into a restaurant, things like that.
Now, the TEFL course that you speak about, is that the teaching English as a foreign language?
Yes, that's right.
So why is it that they first, the first lesson you had was this whole experience of being exposed to Mandarin?
No, well, that's just part of the TEFL course, to sort of demonstrate to us as potential teachers how you can teach a foreign language to somebody that knows no English, or teach English to somebody that knows no English. It was just a sort of demonstration of how it can be done.
So what else do you go through when you go through the process of learning how to teach a foreign language to students?
Well, you learn how to plan a lesson, for example.
Okay.
And ideally lessons should be planned around a theme of some sort. And then you would have this lesson plan, and then you would, for example, you have to teach the lexis, the vocabulary, the chunks of language that will be used in that theme. And you've got to pre-teach that. And teaching this way, you don't dictate to students and say, this is what this means and this is what that means. You actually try to elicit from the students the words that they need. It's a lot of student talk and less teacher talk in this kind of teaching.
Okay, so it's not the kind of formalized classroom that a lot of people are familiar with from their schooling days.
No, not at all, not at all. We bring in a lot of games, a lot of fun, and a lot of. For example, we play bingo. Play bingo with phonemes, because we use the phonemic chart. You know, when you look in a dictionary, it shows you how to pronounce words.
Yes.
That is an international way for pronunciation.
Yes.
And we try to teach those phonemic symbols. It's quite difficult because often the teachers are not 100% certain of them themselves. And so we don't teach spelling, we don't teach words so much as sounds.
We're speaking to Janet Whelan. She is member of the English Academy of Southern Africa. We're talking about foreign language education, learning and teaching strategies. We're taking your calls as well on 0891 104207. Your SMSs 34701, 34701 at a cost of R2. Now, from your experience, is there an effect, or is there an effect of the students also coming from different language backgrounds? So you're the one who's teaching English as the foreign language, but then you've got a classroom of students, pupils who also speak different languages themselves. Is there does that have any impact on how they acquire English, or on how you teach them how to use English? Is there any impact at all?
No, not really. Not really. We assume that nobody can speak English.
Okay.
We try not. For example, a lot of the students belong to a little organization called Talk English, where we teach mostly refugees, foreign refugees, to speak English. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people are professional people, but because they're legal refugees with papers and so on, and because they can't communicate in English, although they may be teachers and engineers or doctors, they can only get jobs as car guards, which is quite sad. And so a lot of them are from the Congo, and they're French-speaking. And I must admit that occasionally I do lapse into a French word to try to tell students what that word means. But basically, we don't. We try to use gestures and facial expressions and objects, pictures, and things to get around it.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to look at issues of examination, how you monitor the progress of your students, and for individuals, if you're learning a foreign language, also let us know what's the experience like for you, particularly considering that. If you're over the age of 10, it just becomes really difficult to acquire a new language. So let us know what your experiences have been if you are taking a foreign language for whatever purposes, and how it works for you, what your frustrations are. You can share them with us on 0891 104207. We'll be back right after this.
SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader.
We're talking about foreign language education with Janet Whelan. She's member of the English Academy of Southern Africa. She teaches English as a foreign language. You can also let us know via phone or SMS. Call us on 0891 104207 if you've decided to learn a new language. What are your frustrations? Aging brain notwithstanding, because it does get harder the older you get to learn a foreign language. But what kinds of frustrations have your students shown, Janet, and how do you overcome them?
Well, it's really quite difficult because we only teach once a week. And in order to really learn a language, a foreign language, you need to immerse yourself in that language. And you need to have contact, every day. read, watch TV, talk to people. If we could teach every day, it would be a lot better. And so the frustration is to try and create some continuity from week to week. And that's quite difficult with just a weekly lesson.
Now, of course, with your students, they're immersed in an environment where English is the language of the economy as well. So I suppose, they've also got the backup of their environment with which to work with, because they need to use the language as a necessity. Have you ever been in circumstances where this is not the case, where your students come and this is the only time that they have contact with English, and they go back to their own context and their own environment where they don't use it at all? Because this is what happens with students in schools today, where they're learning in a language that they don't use in any other part of their lives until they need to get a job.
Well, that's right. And the thing is that a lot of the people that we teach are unemployed. So they tend to perhaps talk to each other in their their native languages, their home languages, or French. And I often walk through the students when we stop for a break, and I hear them speaking French to each other, and I say, hey, only English on Saturday mornings. And it's natural that you want to communicate, and you're with the people that you know best. So unless they make a very conscious effort to, I was learning to speak French, and I went to France, and I used to actually go into shops and just hang around and listen, because you can learn a lot simply by listening.
Yeah. No, because this is one of the frustrations, for example, with folks who teach French in South Africa, and they teach professionals who need to use the language because they're conducting business on the continent, because a great deal of people living in Africa use French, believe it or not.
Yeah, no.
And also traveling, and it's one of the international languages, etc., etc. But one of the biggest frustrations is that students quit after 1 or 2 semesters. And the second one is that they have nowhere else to use the French because they're in South Africa. They don't need to use it until they actually leave the country. So, that kind of commitment, what do you think it takes for students to actually follow through to the point where they can use the language and be able to carry on with their lives?
Well, it all depends upon the incentive, and how much a person wants to learn. I know, because they're surrounded by English all the time. So if these students really, really want to learn and learn quickly, then they will immerse themselves in the language. And we run a little library of simple books, and you get the same students taking up books all the time, and some of them never take them out. So the facility is there, and it's there if they want it. It's just up to the individual.
What are the rewards of the work that you do, teaching a foreign language?
Oh, it's fantastic that you start off with people who know nothing and who are very, very, very shy and refuse to speak because they probably don't want to make a fool of themselves. And I've been in the same position learning French. And then they start opening up, and then sometimes for a lesson I take some topical news item, and we read from the newspaper, and everybody reads. And you find those students that were terribly shy in the beginning are now starting to blossom and to argue and to make comments, and that is very rewarding when you see them.
Yeah, and it's all about gaining confidence as well. Once you gain confidence and you feel that you can be understood, it makes the hugest difference. Thank you so much for your time and for your input, Janet. It was a pleasure having you on the program.
Right.
Go well.
Thank you, Kareva.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Janet Wellen. She's a member of the English Academy of Southern Africa. Your SMSs that you sent in the past hour, we were speaking to two of the London recruits, the Secret War Against Apartheid. SMSs to 34701. Mel says, no wonder our youth are so uneducated. All they ever hear is about the past. Move on. Aren't there any educational books you could review? Mel, I try and review as wide a range of books as possible, which means sometimes I'm going to review stuff that you don't like. That's just how it is. We need to get rid of private property ownership to get rid of the greed by the powerful, says Linda in the Cape. Good luck with that. And hi Karabo, interesting and informative guest. British apartheid was here before 1910, Eastern Cape frontier, and then Zululand. That is from Charles in Cape Town. Thank you, Charles. Always sending SMSs every Sunday. I actually look forward to your SMSs, Charles, so thank you. Wanda in KZN, another regular. How did your guests escape hypocrisy since they were born in Britain? That's because they were mostly raised by left-leaning parents, or they were exposed to stuff at school. What strikes me is that, as young as 14, they were getting involved in this stuff.